Okay. Let's see. We are live.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the April 1st meeting of the Environment Subcommittee. Two items of business. We're going to consider amendments to House Bill 1621, Delegate Grammer's bill, and then we're going to have a little time, up to 15 minutes, for discussion purposes only of amendments uh, to Delga Truss's House Bill 331. So with that, Kristen, could I ask you to pull up the amended version of Delga Grammer's bill?
Would you like me to go over it or
Sure.
so
Yeah, if
everything?
you could, and then Delga Grammer, if you want to add anything, certainly feel free.
So yeah, the bill has been amended, so all of the amendments should be shown on the screen. It doesn't go beyond that. So the amendments take out the requirements that would have been imposed on MDE and wastewater treatment plants relating to discharges from wastewater treatment plants. And instead, the bill is now scaled back to it applies only to the wastewater treatment plants that discharge that are authorized to discharge 50 million gallons of effluent per day. And those and that's just the two wastewater treatment plants, the Back River and Patapsco. And those plants must maintain a website that's accessible to the public and publish certain information relating to discharges on that website. The language also requires wastewater treatment plants to conduct certain required testing of specified constituents and then post the results of that of those test results also on the website.
Okay. And I'm sorry, Kristen, let's see, item two, just saying, refers to begin required testing.
Yeah, so that's within 24 hours after there's a bypass. If there was one of these constituents that require testing, this language is indicating that the wastewater treatment plant must begin that testing within 24 hours, and then 24 hours after receiving those test results, those would then be posted on the website.
Right. Okay. Okay. So with that requirement of testing, otherwise it's notice in a number of these situations where there's been bypass, overflow, or treatment failure, um, and any other steps taken that are consistent with Section 9-331 of the Environment Article, um, which deal with following certain protocols established by that section in the event that there's a discharge of raw or diluted sewage. Yeah, and so any questions about these amendments and Delegate Grammar, anything that you would like to add or, as background? Um,
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And first, let me say thanks to the chair of the committee, the vice chair of the committee, and you for your help on this bill. So this part, the bill, if we move this as amended, really does two things here. There is a frustration between the community and the plant operators. Right now, they are relying on the light that is required under the consent decree to be informed about, failures. But as you know, a wastewater treatment plant can have an issue or it can fail or have a bypass in many different ways. And many of those ways don't actually result in partially treated effluent being released into the bay. So I think what this does effectively is creates a mechanism that I think is going to help demystify a lot of confusion about the quote unquote failures. So I think that's really positive. Also, I think this does really capture when there is like an overflow, the testing for different things that are actually harmful to health for a person who may be exposed to test and report that. So I think this does capture those two elements of the bill very well, and hopefully that helps everybody understand the posture of the bill.
Okay, thank you. Delegate Guyton?
Thank you. I just want to say very briefly, Delegate Grammer brought this as an issue before us, has brought it for several years, and it's obvious that something needs to be done here. I recognize that Delegate Grammer is being very gracious in allowing us to amend the bill to this form, that there is more that he would like to see done. There's probably more that many of us would like to see done. This is a good forward step. And so I thank him for being gracious enough to accept this. I do want to just let the subcommittee know that while you may want to do more or change this bill is probably where it needs to be with everyone's agreement right now. And so whenever the chair is ready to do so, I would like to move the amendments.
Sure. Why don't you hold that for 1
Okay.
second? Let me, Delegate Holmes has his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This applies only to, this question, does this apply only to treatment plants in Maryland? As we know, Blue Plains is in DC, so this does not apply to them. Is that correct? That's my assumption. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. Kristen, is that correct? Delegate Member as well?
Yeah, my understanding, I mean, would be discharge permits issued, from the department, and it's limited to the two in Maryland that meet the threshold discharge level.
Thank you. That's why I assumed. I just wanted clarification. Thank you very much.
Sure. Delegate Frazier-Hidalgo?
Sure. This question is to the bill sponsor. If we take all these amendments, will you vote for the bill?
Yep, I'm all in. I appreciate that.
All right.
Okay. Any other questions? Well, then, Delegate Guyton, you're free to make your motion.
All right, move the amendments, Mr. Chair.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of the amendment say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the amendments pass. Bill
Move
as
the bill.
amended.
Move the bill,
Second.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, all those in favor of the bill as amended say aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? Bill passes as amended. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. No, glad we could get to a product here that, as Delegate Guyton said, is an important first step. And now let's see. So the other item on the agenda is reviewing proposed amendments to House Bill 331, the bottle bill. And again, these are just for discussion. We're not going to entertain a motion to move the amendments or the bill. But the sponsor and advocates had said there, has been a lot of work put into these amendments. So I said, okay, up to 15 minutes. So, we won't be, it won't be a second bill hearing, but an opportunity for the advocates to discuss the proposed amendments. Again, it's sort of in anticipation of the bill coming back next year. So with that, who's on the call would like to start things off?
Well, Delegate Stein, first, let me just say thank you very much for doing this. Martha Ainsworth from Maryland Sierra Club is on, and Scott DeFife from Chipper, which is the coalition on high performance recycling. And so I think the two of them are going to sort of walk through the amendments. I think you and your committee may have gotten the roadmap and the amendments, red line amendments from Martha or from Delegate Terrasa. So I'll turn it over to Martha and Scott to sort of walk through the amendments. And again, appreciate the opportunity to do this.
Sure. Okay, Martha or Scott, you have the ability to share your screen if you'd like to do so.
Excellent. Yes, we'll do that. Yeah, thanks very much for this opportunity. In 15 minutes, the amendments to this bill span many, many pages, even for one issue. So I thought what we might want to do is just get like the main headline issues that have been addressed, if that works for you.
Yes.
So let me go ahead and do that. And we've been working very closely, the Model Bill Coalition and Chipper, and trying to respond. I really don't know how to make this appear on one page. Can you all see that if it's on 2 pages? Not too small?
We can see it.
Yes.
Okay, great.
We can also touch our own screens and make it bigger, colleagues, if you don't know that.
Oh, that's great. Okay, let me just start by saying that, as you recall, the objective of the bottle bill is to reduce litter and plastic pollution. The bill as introduced this year included all of the amendments that the subcommittee and committee approved last year. After ENT approved the bill, the EPR for packaging bill was passed. And I know there were a lot of questions about the interactions between the two bills. The EPR for packaging bill has specific language that addresses the compatibility, and the beverage containers covered by the bottle bill are excluded from the EPR for packaging bill. And one of the big messages in the packaging bill was that if a bottle bill is passed, they have to work together. So the first big amendment here is that the Beverage Container Stewardship Organization, I'm just going to call it the Stewardship Organization for the bottle bill, and the Producer Responsibility Organization must establish a coordination plan. And this is a new section of the bill, and that has to be approved by MDE. The second big issue was the reluctance of MDE to take on more work. So the bill is introduced, reassigned the task of managing the grant program for reuse from MDE to the Chesapeake Bay Trust. But we knew that at the hearing. So what have we done since then? So we have a bunch of items here. Let me see if I can scroll down, that have been reassigned to the Beverage Container Stewardship Organization, subject to approval of MDE, trying to lighten their load. Okay, so one of these is that the whole registration process is now the stewardship organization's responsibility, not MDE's. And they will hand over that list to them, and they will manage also the collection of the producer fees that have to reimburse the oversight of MDE. Instead of having to develop a fee for each and every beverage producer, MDE is going to be able to say, this is how much it took us to prepare the bill. This is how much the first year is projected to cost. Stewardship organization, pay us that, and you figure out how to distribute amongst all the producers. So that is actually another major improvement from the MDE perspective, I think. There were a bunch of requirements for developing standards and processes in the bill, and these are all now the ones listed there in the little bullets. The standards and licensing process, submitting approval and monitoring an account-based bulk processing program, and a process for a county or municipality to create and operate a redemption facility. Those are all things now that are proposed by the stewardship organization and approved, subject to the approval by MDE. They no longer have to develop an application process for the grant program because the Chesapeake Bay Trust, no surprise there, already has such procedures that are fine. In terms of the handling fees for the retailers, redemption facilities, and on-premises sellers, if you recall, on-premises sellers are people who sell beverages, are businesses that sell beverages for consumption on the premises, like a restaurant or a hotel or a stadium. So instead of just thinking about a per container handling fee, it kind of liberates the stewardship organization to propose a way to finance them that they can just contract within each, with each other between there, as long as everyone's happy. And when I'm done here, Scott DeFife may want to say something about that. Let's see, we have a new definition of beverage producer that's so much simpler than the one in the EPR for packaging program. It's the brand owner, basically. And so that means that the brand owner is responsible for financing the operation of the program, not the distributors or the bottlers. So then we have this discussion of why we did this. On the fourth point, remember this last time around, we had the materials recovery facilities, the recycling places, were reimbursed for the processing costs of unredeemed redeemable beverage containers until the start of the EPR for packaging bill. But in fact, they won't even be in the EPR for packaging bill. So we just took that out. They're just going to get these processing costs reimbursed forever for as many containers as they process. The small retailers, remember those were retailers with less than 3,000 square feet of sales area. It also included, bigger stores that only had a few little compartments and refrigerators in the front by the checkout, like a hardware store. They are exempt from having to take back any containers or refunding any deposits. Previously, we said if they were selling a container that wasn't acceptable to a reverse vending machine, that they would have to take them back. But we've removed that entirely. They can do it through a bag drop. All they have to do now is just post on the door the nearest site where someone can get their money back. Okay, let's see how this goes. Let's see. Oh, here we go, page down. All right, and beyond that, the retailers, all the retailers, they need to maintain on-site capacity. And this is something that Chipper suggested instead of a dedicated area. This includes someplace in the parking lot or nearby. So for the redemption activities, we've number 6, we've removed the term refillable on advice from upstream and got a new definition of reusable beverage containers to make it clear that they're not reusable bottles that we all have at home. These are reusable, returnable bottles, and allowed them to have a higher deposit level as part of a reuse system, and that's very important. Some of you may get, I know that Scott gets this, South Mountain Creamery or Dairy has a $3 deposit on their glass bottles that you pay, and then you get it back when you return the bottle. So those types of operations actually we want to encourage. But they would have to, I think in regulation, you have to go through the steps of what they have to do. But so they can have more than a 10 or 15 cent deposit. And then we had a few extra provisions to prevent or report fraudulent behavior. There are already things in the bill to prevent fraudulent behavior, but these were 3 other things. As part of the registration process, the beverage producers have to report for each beverage container type on the registration form whether it depicts a UPC or jurisdictional UPC barcode. The fee structure should favor, the fee structure should be based in part on whether the containers have incorporated features reducing fraudulent redemption. And the stewardship plan must describe how it will monitor and report any suspected instance of fraudulent activity to MD for enforcement. And then finally, there was a misunderstanding in the language of the bill, and we apologize for that. The amendment clarifies deposits applied to the purchase of redeemable beverage containers, not added to the wholesale or retail price. Through these bills, it's always the case, the deposit is an additional to the price. It's not part of the price. So that's cleared up. So I guess I'll stop sharing to see if anyone has questions, or maybe Scott wants to add something.
Sure. Any questions from subcommittee members? Delegate Grammer, did you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mhm.
So can someone explain to me the nature of the stewardship organization? Like, who is that going to be?
Okay, I can answer that, Scott, unless you want to.
Go ahead, Martha. I'm happy to chime in.
Okay, the stewardship organization is a nonprofit, a single nonprofit to which all beverage company producers selling in the state have to belong. And they're responsible for financing and implementing the program on behalf of the producers. So they have internal charges to be part of the program. They also can use the revenues from the sold materials when all the beverage containers are recycled in the materials sold on the market, and some unredeemed deposits. So all that funds the program. So it is actually, after year one, budget neutral to the state. And they have to reimburse MDE for all of the oversight and appropriation.
So it's so industry players essentially.
Exactly. It's like a producer pays type setup.
Don't we think there might be some kind of conflict of interest there and having them run it as opposed to MDE? And I understand the concern of MDE, but it's kind, there's a certain benefit to recovering these materials. Don't we think there's a bit of a problem there?
Martha, if I
Go ahead. Yeah.
Delegate Grammer, this is Scott. We visited on this subject. This really aligns the producer level responsibility to be equal to the EPR program, which is also an organization of producers that has to organize itself to run the program under the guidance and regulation of the department. So the PRO is not just free to do whatever it wants. It has to develop, they have to organize themselves, develop a plan, get the plan approved by the regulatory agency with changes. So until until MDE is ready to approve a action plan, nothing goes into effect. And so they're not just free to do it how they want to. And being a 501c3, they're and with the transparency provisions that were built in, it will be fully transparent to your constituents and to the taxpayers about exactly how the program's being run, with oversight from the legislature and the department. But really, it equates. If you're a producer, you're in the EPR program. If you're a producer, you're in, and you have beverage containers, you're in the bottle bill program. But there's a really an equal treatment from a producer organization standpoint now with the two bills, and the amendments that we've been working on, as we testified, were offered in a friendly manner to help bring the legislation up to the post EPR world, right? Because as Martha said, the original bill was authored and written prior to the passage of EPR. Once EPR got passed, we wanted to bring the standards of the bottle bill up to the same standards of the EPR management.
Would that? I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say there are a couple other things in there. First of all, there's an enforceable redemption rate target of 90%. And if they don't get to 90% of the beverage container, currently we're recycling about a quarter of the beverage containers sold in Maryland. So if they don't get to 90%, they pay a penalty per container short. Okay.
Would they be subject to a PIA under the bill as amended?
A PIA.
What
Public Information Act. And let me just jump in and say, Delegate Grammer, I appreciate your questions. I mean, we're sort of nearing the end of the window that I'd provided. So my recommendation, Delegate Grammer, is maybe offline if you want to follow up with Martha and Scott and Lorenzo about your concerns, and then and that would be best. And now we can, I'll just, if there are any other comments, Scott, Martha, or Lorenzo, you want to make, since we are at 15 minutes, and that's what I promised would be the window.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, only that we really appreciate the opportunity to vet these with you. When we testified, we started working with the sponsors, on the amendments that we thought would help address many of the questions that we had, really relieve the requirement for any of the actual containers to be redeemed inside a store, make it much easier to redeem, and to ensure that a producer's product is either in one bucket or the other bucket and not in both buckets, and not getting charged more than once. And all of those things are much clearer now with the language that would be added via these amendments.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. And obviously this discussion will be continued, presumably in next year's session. And and I do realize a lot of work has been put into this since the bill hearing on these amendments. So, thanks in sort of summary form presenting them.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And just, for your information, we look forward to working with you and your committee during the interim as well. And I know, after the primaries, I think there'll be some bandwidth to revisit this. But we look forward to, I consider this the first meeting for 2027. So I appreciate that, and for your colleagues listening to what we have to say and to clarify these amendments. And hopefully you all understand what they do and makes the bill much better. And we look forward to the interim and next session.
Yeah, the summary and the presentation were very helpful, so thank you. Okay, with that, we will call it a wrap, and we will, I'm sure, be having another meeting of the subcommittee to discuss Senate bills at some point in the not too distant future. So stay tuned, but in the meantime, have a good afternoon.